Hi, I'm Harvey Blankfeld, host of Las Vegas Real Estate Now and principal of the Blankfeld Group at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services of Nevada. We have prepared this video for you so you can better understand the documents we use here in Southern Nevada. And while we don't review every section of the document, we do try and clear up some of the most relevant concerns. We are recording this video in 2023, and if you're watching long after that, there are likely changes that have taken place with this document, and this video may have some parts that are outdated. Also know that we operate in Southern Nevada, and these forms are specific to our market. While you may be able to glean some value from this video, please know that no two markets operate exactly alike. And finally, I need you to know that I'm not an attorney, and none of what I'm saying should be interpreted as legal advice. Okay, let's get started. The Blankfeld Group Transaction Calendar. This is a form we developed a few years ago to make sure that all the parties in the transaction agree on the important dates of that transaction. And so what we did was we developed this little document and we built it so that whenever we have a transaction, we can prepare this and send it out to all parties, and all parties can agree that these are in fact the dates that we want to all recognize as important to this transaction. So that's why we developed it. Let's tell you what it's all about. It's also actually just a good summation of the deal. It has a lot of the details in the deal that we can use like as a cover page to the deal. So it's actually quite useful. So let's start up top. The first number you're going to see here is the escrow number. We'll put that on the document. Then we'll put the multiple list number here. That's from the marketing from the multiple list. Here's the agreed upon sales price. And then here you're seeing who we are, the Blankfeld Group, who we're representing in the transaction. In this case, we're representing the buyer. And which one of our agents is representing the buyer. In this case, it's me. And then this is an internal number we use for tracking our transactions. And then right here is the type of financing that's involved in this transaction. Over here is the date of the property that's being transacted. I'm not sorry, the date, the address. Why did I say date? The address of the property is being transacted. Here are the names of our sellers. And coincidentally, their names happen to be seller. And here are the names of our fictitious buyers, and their names happen to be buyer. Now, here's maybe the most important date that we use here, and that's the contract date. That's right here. We've completed that. And the definition of a contract date here for us is this over here. The contract date is the date the finally agreed to and executed documents are delivered. So when the last counter is signed and delivered to the other party, that's the contract date. That's when everything starts, okay? Now, in this case, earnest money is due in 2 days. The due diligence is 10. These are right off the contract, and we'll plug these numbers in. And then finally, the other number we pull off the contract is the close of escrow date. That's here. And then once we plug all this in, and you can look and make sure that we've done the right numbers according to the contract, it will generate the specific dates that things need to be due and completed by. The earnest money needs to be in escrow by February 1st in this case. The preliminary title report needs to be delivered to our buyer by the 13th. The inspection addendum needs to be agreed to by this date. Now, this is an important term, agreed to. This is very important. When you do a home inspection, in this case, they have 10 days due diligence. If you do the home inspection, you need to not only complete the inspection, submit the request for repairs, and both parties need to agree on how you're going to proceed as a result of that request. Is the seller going to agree to do all of it, some of it, none of it, pay for some of it, whatever that agreement is? That has to all be completed by this date. And this date, in this case, that's February 9th. Now, if it's not, and you're afraid you're going to run up against it, and the buyer, in my case, I'm representing the buyer, and we're not going to make that date, I may either have to ask for an extension, or the buyer may have to cancel because the seller's not responding to that request in a timely manner. So we want to make sure we get those things done timely. That's really important. The next is the CIC resale package. This is the HOA documents. They need to be delivered to my buyer by the 14th of February. The appraisal needs to be completed by February 20th in this case. Completed means if it came in, great. If it didn't come in at value, both parties need to agree on how they're going to address it. Is the deal going to move forward? Is it going to be canceled? Is the price going to be changed? Is the buyer going to come out of pocket? There's a number of ways to go with an appraisal if it doesn't come in. So if it doesn't come in, we still need to resolve it by this date. And again, if we're not going to get it resolved, we may need to require and write up an extension of that deadline so both parties agree to give it a little more time to get it negotiated. The financing contingency should be completed by this date. That's February 23rd in this case. This means that the lender and the buyer are satisfied that they're going to be able to close this deal based on the loan requirements. Sometimes the lender will actually send you something, say, yep, you're finally approved, ready to go, we're ready to draw a doc, something of that nature. Sometimes they won't. But even if they don't, the buyer and the lender need to agree that they're comfortable with the fact that this is going to expire. Because once this expires, you can't cancel based on financing any longer. The CD must be delivered by this date. The CD is a document that the lender delivers to the buyer and has to do it so many days prior to close of escrow. And it has to be done so the buyer's not even allowed to sign until they've had it at least, I believe it's 3 days in most cases. So this case, that's February 27th. And I think it's 3 business days, by the way, but the calculation's in here for us. Escrow signed by the buyer, they need to sign sometime before the 1st or 2nd. That's the latest they could sign in order for this to close on time, which is the 2nd. So we need the buyer signed definitely by then. The seller can sign any time from the 23rd of February up to the 1st of March. The seller could theoretically sign any time as long as they're comfortable doing that, but we don't want them to sign until we're sure the deal is going to close, obviously. So we've got a window here. The final walkthrough needs to take place sometime between the 27th of February and March the 2nd. And then these 3 other spots here would only be used if they're involved in the contract. The first is the contingent upon sale deadline. That is the date with which the buyer of the property needs to remove their contingency that they're selling another property on. So if they're saying, hey, I'm buying your home, but I got to sell mine first, this is that deadline. Either your home has to be sold or you have to agree to waive this contingency and move ahead. That's what that date is. The next one is the buyer's possession date. Sometimes buyers might possess the home prior to close of escrow. Sometimes they might possess it some days after because the seller needs to stay in it. This is that date. And then when you have a date different than close of escrow, you also have a separate walkthrough date. And this would be that date here underneath it. So that's what these dates are all about. Now at the bottom of this form, what we've done is we've put down the names, phone numbers, and emails of all the important parties in this transaction other than the principals. We don't put the buyer or seller information here because we do share this with all parties, and the buyer's agent doesn't need to know the seller's contact information, and the seller's agent doesn't need to know the buyer's contact information, so we don't put them on here. But all the other pertinent parties, their phone numbers and emails are here, so everybody and anybody can reach out to any one of them at any time should they feel compelled to do so. And that's all at the bottom of the form. The dates are calculated upon our interpretation. We developed this form so that we can say, hey, here's what we think these dates are based on our interpretation of the contract. We send it off to the buyer's agent, or in this case, the listing agent, the lender, the escrow, and our client and say, hey guys, here's what we think the dates are. Let us know if you don't agree. And then if you don't agree, let's get that figured out now. I don't want to come up on a deadline and say, hey, we don't agree on that deadline. So I want to make sure we have it all calculated well ahead of time. That's why we do this document for all of our clients. And we do it whether we're representing the buyer or the seller. So I hope that's helpful. Thanks for paying attention. I hope you found this video helpful. Please feel free to review our other videos at www.lvrrealestateradio.com. And once again, thank you for taking the time to learn about this document. And if you have any questions, just call or text me at 702-203-1165.